Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today we begin a detailed and fascinating journey into the history, symbolism, and collector significance of the British one-penny coin featuring Queen Elizabeth II, a coin that may appear simple at first glance but actually carries decades of political change, cultural identity, and numismatic evolution within the United Kingdom. Because the British one-penny is not just a small copper or bronze coin used for everyday transactions, it is a silent witness to the longest reign in British history and the transformation of Britain from a post-war empire into a modern global nation. And to truly understand this coin, we must start with the accession of Queen Elizabeth II in 1952, a moment that marked the beginning of a new era following the death of King George VI. When Britain was still recovering from World War II, rationing was ongoing, and the British pound system operated under the old pre-decimal structure of pounds, shillings, and pence, where one penny represented 1/240th of a pound, giving even the smallest coin real economic relevance in daily life, and the introduction of Queen Elizabeth II's portrait onto British coinage symbolized continuity, stability, and renewal, especially important during a time of social and economic rebuilding, and the first one-penny coins bearing her image were issued in 1953, coinciding with her coronation. And these early pennies are especially important to collectors because they represent the very beginning of her reign and feature what is known as the young head portrait, showing the queen with a laurel wreath, designed to reflect youth, dignity, and classical tradition, a design choice that deliberately avoided excessive ornamentation to emphasize modesty and service rather than power. And on the reverse side of the coin, the familiar crown portcullis with chains remained, a symbol deeply rooted in British history, associated with Parliament and the authority of the state, reinforcing the idea that the monarchy and government were intertwined yet balanced. And compositionally, early Elizabeth II pennies were struck in bronze, a metal choice that had been standard for British pennies for generations, giving the coin its distinctive warm brown tone and solid weight, which many people still associate with real money. And these coins circulated heavily throughout Britain, passing through countless hands in markets, buses, schools, and shops, embedding themselves into everyday memory and making them deeply nostalgic objects today. And as the decades progressed, the Queen's portrait on the penny evolved, reflecting her aging and the passage of time, something unique to British coinage where successive effigies of the same monarch appear across different periods, allowing collectors to trace history visually through metal. And this continuous updating of her portrait turned the one-penny coin into a chronological record of her reign, something unmatched by most other world currencies. And beyond its physical attributes, the one-penny coin became a cultural symbol, often referenced in British sayings, childhood memories, and even social class discussions. Because pennies mattered, they were saved, counted, and respected. And for collectors today, these coins offer an accessible entry point into British numismatics, as they are widely available yet filled with subtle variations, historical context, and emotional value. And by beginning our exploration with the origins, early designs, and historical setting of the Queen Elizabeth II one-penny coin, we set the foundation for understanding why this small denomination holds such a powerful place in British history and global coin collecting, preparing us to dive deeper into minting changes, varieties, errors, values, and long-term collector appeal as this story continues. As we continue deeper into the story of the British one-penny coin under Queen Elizabeth II, it becomes clear that this coin evolved alongside the nation itself, quietly adapting to political, economic, and social change while remaining a constant presence in everyday British life. Because after the initial 1953 coronation issues, penny production continued steadily through the 1950s and 1960s as the United Kingdom worked to redefine its global role in a post-imperial world. And during this period the penny retained its traditional bronze composition, substantial weight, and classic round shape, reinforcing a sense of monetary continuity at a time when much else was changing. And the portrait of the Queen used on these coins, officially approved by the monarchy and produced under the authority of the Royal Mint, was not merely decorative but symbolic, because each effigy represented how the monarchy wished to be seen by the public, dignified yet approachable, modern yet rooted in centuries of tradition. And as the Queen matured, new portraits were introduced, such as the New Portrait by Arnold Machin in 1968, which showed a more realistic and confident monarch, reflecting both personal maturity and the stability of her reign. And these portrait transitions are especially important to collectors because they mark clear historical phases, allowing the penny to function almost like a timeline struck in metal. And during this era the penny still held real purchasing power, often used by children to buy sweets, newspapers, or bus fare, meaning these coins circulated heavily and developed the worn, smooth surfaces that collectors now associate with authentic circulation history, and the reverse design of the crown portcullis continued unchanged, reinforcing institutional continuity even as Britain prepared for one of the most significant monetary reforms in its history, decimalization, which would ultimately transform the penny's role forever, and leading up to decimalization in 1971, pennies featuring Queen Elizabeth II became objects of both practical use and quiet anticipation, as people knew the old currency system was nearing its end, prompting some to save examples of familiar coins as keepsakes, unknowingly preserving future collectibles. And this transition period is crucial in understanding why certain dates are more common in worn condition while others survive in higher grades, because hoarding behavior increased as the old system faded. And emotionally, these pennies became symbols of a disappearing way of life, representing not just money but memories of a slower, more tactile economy, and when viewed through a numismatic lens, the Queen Elizabeth II one-penny coin from this era stands as a bridge between old and new Britain, linking Victorian monetary traditions with modern decimal currency, and by examining these mid-reign developments, portrait changes, and social roles of the penny, we gain a much richer appreciation of why this small coin commands such lasting respect among collectors today, setting the stage for an even deeper exploration of decimal-era changes, metal composition shifts, varieties, and long-term collector value in the next part of this story. As we move into the decimal era and the technical evolution of the British one-penny coin featuring Queen Elizabeth II, the importance of this denomination becomes even more complex, because decimalization in 1971 was not simply a change in numbers but a complete restructuring of how money was understood and used in the United Kingdom, and with the introduction of the new decimal penny, valued at 1/100th of a pound rather than 1/240th, the penny's purchasing power was dramatically reduced, transforming it from a meaningful unit of daily trade into a largely symbolic coin, and this shift forced the Royal Mint to rethink not only the coin's value but also its physical design, leading to the creation of a new, larger one-penny coin struck in bronze, distinct from its pre-decimal predecessor, yet still familiar enough to ease the public into the new system. And this new decimal penny featured a redesigned reverse showing a crowned portcullis with chains, echoing historic symbolism while signaling continuity within change, and on the obverse, a fresh portrait of the Queen was introduced, reflecting her transition into middle age, a subtle but powerful reminder that time itself was passing alongside the nation's monetary system, and collectors today view these early decimal pennies as historically significant because they represent Britain's first steps into modern currency, coins that carried both uncertainty and optimism into everyday life, and production numbers during the early 1970s were extremely high, as millions of coins were required to educate and supply the public, which explains why early decimal pennies are common in circulated condition, yet paradoxically difficult to find in pristine, uncirculated grades due to heavy usage, and over time, changes in metal prices began to affect minting decisions, as rising copper costs made bronze increasingly expensive, prompting discussions that would eventually lead to a major composition change, and this economic pressure highlights an important truth in numismatics, that coins are not only historical artifacts but also industrial products subject to global markets and government budgets, and during this period, the Queen's effigy continued to evolve, with new portraits approved to reflect her aging while maintaining regal authority, reinforcing the uniquely British tradition of updating monarch portraits throughout a reign, and for collectors, these portrait transitions create natural sub-series within the one-penny coin, each associated with specific decades, economic conditions, and public sentiment, and culturally, the decimal penny became deeply embedded in British childhood memory, used in school fundraisers, charity boxes, and small purchases, giving it emotional significance that far outweighs its monetary value. And by understanding the decimal transition, design choices, and economic pressures shaping the one-penny coin during Queen Elizabeth II's reign, we begin to see how this humble denomination reflects broader themes of adaptation, modernization, and continuity, preparing us to explore varieties, errors, scarcity, and collector value in the next part of this story. As we continue into the varieties, errors, and collector-driven distinctions of the British one-penny coin under Queen Elizabeth II, the penny begins to reveal a surprisingly complex numismatic landscape, because while millions of these coins were struck for circulation across decades, not all pennies are created equal, and subtle differences in date, metal, strike quality, and minting anomalies can significantly influence desirability, and one of the most important technical changes occurred in 1992, when the Royal Mint transitioned the penny's composition from bronze to copper-plated steel, a decision driven by rising metal costs and economic efficiency, and this change created an immediate physical distinction between older and newer pennies, as bronze coins are non-magnetic while steel-based coins are magnetic, giving collectors a simple yet effective way to separate two major eras of production. And from a collector's standpoint, this composition shift represents more than cost saving. It marks the end of a long tradition of solid bronze British coinage, making pre-1992 pennies especially appealing to those who value historical continuity and material authenticity, and within these bronze issues, certain dates are known for lower mintages or weaker strikes, leading to greater scarcity in higher grades, and errors also play a role in elevating specific coins, including off-center strikes, clipped planchets, double strikes, and die cracks, which, while uncommon, are highly sought after because they demonstrate the mechanical realities of coin production, even within a highly controlled minting environment. And another fascinating area of study involves portrait variations, as the Queen's effigy changed multiple times throughout her reign, with each portrait requiring new master dies, sometimes resulting in transitional varieties where small design details differ subtly from standard issues. And collectors who specialize in these nuances often build comprehensive date and portrait sets, appreciating the penny not as a single coin but as a long-running visual narrative of the monarch's life. And market value for one penny coins remains modest for most common dates in circulated condition, yet examples in high mint state, particularly early decimal issues or well-preserved bronze pennies, can command strong premiums due to their scarcity in such condition. And emotionally, these coins hold enduring appeal because they connect personal memory with national history, often being the first coins people ever handled or collected as children. And from a long-term perspective, the Queen Elizabeth II one-penny coin is increasingly viewed as a closed historical series following the end of her reign, which adds a layer of finality that often enhances collector interest over time. And by examining composition changes, minting errors, portrait varieties, and condition-based scarcity, we gain a deeper understanding of why this seemingly ordinary coin occupies a respected place within British numismatics, setting the stage for a final reflection on cultural legacy, future collectability, and historical meaning in the concluding part of this series. As we enter the final historical reflection on the British one-penny coin featuring Queen Elizabeth II, its significance expands beyond minting details and collector value into the realm of cultural memory and national identity, because few objects have been handled by as many people, across as many generations, as this humble penny, making it one of the most intimate connections between the monarchy and the everyday lives of citizens in the United Kingdom, and throughout the Queen's long reign. The penny quietly recorded the passage of time, social change, and economic evolution, moving from a coin of real purchasing power in the post-war years to a largely symbolic denomination in the digital age, and this transformation mirrors Britain's own journey, as the nation shifted from industrial recovery to global modernization. And the evolving portraits of the Queen on the penny serve as a visual diary of this journey, showing her youth, maturity, and later years, allowing future generations to literally see history aging in metal. And culturally, the penny became deeply embedded in British language, folklore, and habit, appearing in expressions, childhood games, charity traditions, and everyday transactions that shaped personal memory. And because of this, the coin carries emotional weight that far exceeds its face value, making it a powerful artifact for historians and collectors alike. And from a broader numismatic perspective, the Queen Elizabeth II one-penny coin demonstrates how long-running series gain importance not through rarity alone, but through continuity, consistency, and shared experience, as millions of people recognize the design instantly, even if they no longer use the coin. And following the end of the Queen's reign, these pennies have taken on a new layer of meaning, becoming tangible reminders of an era defined by stability, service, and gradual change. And as newer generations encounter the coin primarily through collections rather than circulation, its role shifts from functional currency to historical document, offering insight into how nations express authority, identity, and values through everyday objects. And this shift ensures that the penny will remain relevant in education, museums, and private collections, not as a rare treasure, but as a meaningful piece of lived history. And by reflecting on the cultural legacy, emotional resonance, and historical continuity of the Queen Elizabeth II one-penny coin, we come to understand that its true value lies not in metal or market price, but in the collective memory it represents, preparing us for a final conclusion that ties together its numismatic, historical, and cultural importance. As we reach the final conclusion of the British one-penny coin bearing the portrait of Queen Elizabeth II, its place in history becomes fully clear, because this small denomination ultimately stands as one of the most enduring material records of a reign that shaped modern Britain, and while the penny itself may have faded from everyday use, its legacy continues to grow as both a historical artifact and a cultural symbol within the United Kingdom, representing continuity, service, and quiet stability across generations. And unlike coins defined by sudden rarity or dramatic redesigns, the Queen Elizabeth II 1 penny gained its importance through consistency, longevity, and universal familiarity, passing through the hands of children, workers, shopkeepers, and collectors alike, becoming part of daily ritual rather than spectacle. And this widespread interaction gave the coin a uniquely democratic character, as it belonged to everyone regardless of class or status, reinforcing the idea that the monarchy was present not only in ceremonies and portraits but in the most ordinary moments of life. And from a numismatic standpoint, the penny now occupies a closed chapter following the end of the Queen's reign, which naturally strengthens collector interest, as complete date runs, portrait sets, and pre- and post-composition change examples become more meaningful when viewed as a finished historical series. And future collectors will likely approach these coins not as loose change, but as markers of time, associating specific designs with decades, social moods, and economic realities. And academically, the penny will continue to be referenced as a case study in how currency evolves alongside society, adapting to inflation, technology, and cultural change while still preserving symbolic tradition. And emotionally, these coins will remain powerful triggers of memory, recalling childhood savings, first purchases, and a world where physical money played a central role in daily interaction. And as cash itself becomes less dominant, the Queen Elizabeth II 1 penny coin gains additional importance as a tangible reminder of a tactile monetary past, ensuring its relevance long after its purchasing power has vanished. And in the end, this coin teaches one of the most important lessons in numismatics, that true significance is not measured only by rarity or value, but by shared experience, historical continuity, and the stories embedded within metal. And with that final reflection, we close the complete story of the British 1 penny coin of Queen Elizabeth II, a modest denomination with an extraordinary legacy. And thanks for watching.